Hey folks, welcome back to HeartGold vs. Crystal. We are here in Goldenrod City. You may remember that call we got from Professor Elm. There is something happening here at the radio tower. Team Rocket has taken over, and that is no good. And we're going to have to do something about that, but unfortunately we don't fit the dress code. We'll also have to do something about that. And incidentally, this leads into my absolute favorite part of the game, bar none. Not the dungeon. The dungeon's pretty straightforward and uninteresting and repetitive, but this right here is just the best. Watch this. Brace yourselves. Ta-da! We actually get to walk around and run around and do things in the Team Rocket uniform for a little bit. It lasts maybe a minute, but it's just the best ever. I really wish they did a little more with this, but it was not in the originals. It was only added for our Gold and Soul Silver, so they couldn't add too much. Otherwise, they would be, depending on your perspective, compromising the vision of the original or doing more work than they felt like doing. Anyway, of course, as soon as it begins, all good things must come to an end. Jerk. He just ruins everything, he really does. Anyway, fight him, he has Eradicate, whatever. Man, now we can't sneak in undetected, we have to go fight things and get experience. What a drag. But anyway, welcome to the radio tower. This is Gold Silver Crystal's version of the Sylph Corporation takeover. And because it's obviously trying to be like the Sylph Corporation, heck, there's even an in-game plot reason why they're trying to be like the Sylph Corporation, I must compare it to my favorite dungeon ever, the Sylph Corporation. This dungeon is fairly linear. There's precisely one puzzle, and it's very easy to figure out. And the rest of it is just climbing up stairs, with trainers in the way. No navigation, just fighting. It's also not incredibly difficult. You remember how Sylph Corporation was, like, dangerous and taxing, and you would often run away and retreat to the Pokemon Center because you were, like, struggling? That won't really happen here very often. Maybe in preparation for the mid-boss, but overall, it's not too challenging. They try to make it challenging, but it's not incredibly challenging. I'll explain why they try to make it challenging right after what you're about to see. And what you're about to see is finally Bree evolving in Crystal. This took about as long as I expected, actually. Since the Soothe Bell doesn't exist in 2nd generation, as far as I'm aware, or at least I didn't have one, it took a lot longer for Bree to evolve into Togetic. But now that Bree is evolved, we can teach her Fly and do all those cool things that our current Bree and HeartGold can do. Unfortunately, still doesn't have extra sensory or anything like that, so Metronome still on the moveset. Now, admittedly, they do try to make this dungeon difficult in that they're starting to give people evolved Pokemon. You will see Arboks and Weezings and Mucks fairly commonly, rather than their first stage evolutions, although you will see plenty of their first stage evolutions. And, I mean, they're giving evolved forms. It's still just not incredibly difficult because as long as you have something to take care of poison types, you can take care of poison types fairly well. Seriously, look at how linear this stuff is. It's like pretty linear. Anyway, here's actually one fight that is notable and interesting and different, and you're going to see all of it because there's precisely one other fight in this video, and that's the mid-boss. This is the scientist with a Porygon, as I like to call him. He's dangerous. Porygon is an interesting guy. He was a first-generation Pokemon, available only by getting, I believe, 9,999 coins in the Game Corner, and sell it on Game Corner, and buying him as a prize. It might have been a different cost between the two versions, but he's obscenely expensive and honestly not worth the time. Here, I don't remember if you can get him any other way. You can... I know he's fairly easy to get in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, because you would get him from the garden where the guy gets rare Pokemon. But here, it might be a bit tricky to get him. But Porygon is basically a scientifically created Pokemon. His name is Polygon. It's just misromanized, probably intentionally, because calling him Polygon would be pretty boring. And his gimmick is the conversion moves, Conversion and Conversion 2. And those will change his type depending on a variety of factors that I can never remember. I think one of them's based on the opponent's type, and maybe based on the moves opponents used, I don't really know. But the point is, he can change types at the drop of a hat, which probably isn't the right way to use that turn of phrase. But it means that you have to be constantly adapting your strategy, or just plow through with brute force like I'm trying to do here. But this guy also has Recover, and he recovers slightly more than I can deal. So, essentially using Nightshade, I need to wait for him to not try to recover, or for the planets to align. But unfortunately, as you can see, ever so close, not getting there. And although Webster will fight this guy for quite a while longer, it's about this is the scenario. This is what you're gonna see. But I want to show it because it's probably the most interesting fight we've had. That we'll have in what would be this episode. Like, none of the other fights are probably that interesting. And I don't know, for filling time and for talking more about Porygon, let's just say Porygon is a bit notorious in terms of the anime, as people who probably follow the anime are aware of. Porygon was the subject of one of the very first cancelled episode. One that was never shown in the US and was only shown in Japan once, I believe. And it was banned, I guess is how people like to refer to it, because originally it gave people seizures at one point. There was a time when, like, Ash and friends went into the Tron world, in the Digi world, and Pikachu's Thunder, Shock, Bolt, Smash had flashing lights and caused seizures. And for whatever reason, they decided to blame Porygon rather than Pikachu, and Porygon has never appeared in the anime since. Neither Porygon, nor Porygon 2, nor Porygon Z. He's never appeared. And it's a darn shame, because he's a cool guy. And I'll admit, I've seen the episode. It's not that great. It's okay. It's neat for the novelty of new sci-fi world, but it's pretty average, to be honest. You're not missing much. One of the other things I remember about Porygon is actually his appearances in Pokemon Snap, because I believe he would appear on the river route. I think that's the only route he appeared on. But they would be camouflaged. He would either have a rocky ground texture or the grass texture, depending on what he's hiding in. Which is, I don't know, it's interesting, because I don't know if that's like part of Porygon lore, is that they can change their polygons. But I don't know, it's interesting, and it's a neat way to use a Pokemon based around polygons, is to like change his texture as if he's a computer model, basically. Well, not a model of computer, but, you know, a 3D model, digital model. You know, like he's an actual, like, model. It's interesting. But anyway, unfortunately, things didn't work out for Webster. In an ideal world, I would have been able to poison him, but that just wasn't happening, and then he turned into a poison type. So now it's time for Frida to get in there and see what she can do. Hopefully deal a little more damage. That didn't really work out, unfortunately, right there. I suppose if I were paying more attention to how Conversion 2 worked, I might have been able to defeat this guy a little more handily. But that didn't really happen. So let's just use the Solar Beam and hope for the best. Solar Beam still actually pretty viable and reliable. I swear to God, if he uses another Recover, I will probably hurt something. And no, he doesn't. Charge Beam's, I think, an electric move. Raises your special attack sometimes. I think there's like Volkner's signature move in Diamond Pearl Platinum or something. I don't know. That's not nearly as interesting as Porygon lore. But anyway, Porygon gets out of the way, and I will see you guys after this commercial break for the mini-boss of the Radio Tower. Alrighty, it's time for the mini-boss. I say mini-boss because I'm pretty sure most of you assumed that the dungeon isn't over yet, and we wouldn't find the director so easily. And yeah, and you've probably all played some variation of this game. It's Betrayal again, master of disguise. And Betrayal is like the least interesting trainer in this dungeon. But I'm obligated to show him because he's an executive. But his team, it's like coughing into wheezing. They might explode, or they might die to your psychic type attacks. I mean, he's especially a joke in Crystal, where you can just use a ground type move and defeat each and every one of them fairly easily. I assure you that's what I did in Crystal. You don't need to see me defeat this 5 coughing and a wheezing again in another version, because it's less of a story. It was a clean sweep there. Here there were actually a few hang-ups, because Confusion didn't do as much damage as I wanted. And these guys do have good physical defense, so that return didn't do as much as I wanted, and they got very good luck with the poisoning, which is not good for me. But all in all, you're fighting the same Pokemon 5 times, and also one Pokemon who's slightly stronger, but is essentially the same story. Again, if you don't have a Psychic-type move or Ground-type move by this point, well, not Ground-type move, I guess, in this case, but you'll want something. Use a special move, because these guys are physical walls. Yeah, Weezing's just about the most threatening thing on his team, and admittedly, it's dangerous. If it explodes, you're gonna die. Like, pretty sure you're gonna die, unless you're a ghost type. But yeah, you can see that even an extra sensory from Bree, which is generally my screw it button, my okay, the opponent's going to die now kind of button. It took that hit pretty well. The sludge was dangerous, and it poisoned, and just all sorts of bad things happened. The smoke screen kicked in, and it was just, everything was terrible. It was unfortunate. It was truly not a great situation for Bree. Now luckily we're still dealing with normal poison rather than bad poison. If these guys had toxic, I imagine I would probably go on a murderous rampage. But yeah, the Super Potion didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. Breeze down, and we need to figure out a new way of taking care of these guys, because ground-type moves won't work, they have Levitate, and I am out of Psychic moves. And it's gonna be tricky. It's gonna be pretty darn tricky. Well, it's not so much tricky so much as, oh my god, you stupid, stop poisoning my Pokemon, honestly. Yeah, gonna have to figure out a way to take these guys down, or they can kill themselves. Take these guys down with mostly physical-oriented attackers. Ooh, a critical explosion to boot. Isn't that wonderful? Explosions suck because the Pokemon you're using are basically guaranteed to die. And also, nobody will get experience from it, because the Pokemon that would normally get experience die. It's unfortunate. Anyway, in my foolishness against that Porygon, I used up all my Nightshade PP. That probably would have been my best option against these guys now. So, yeah, that was not great. I probably had an Ether or an Elixir in my inventory, but I don't like to use those outside the Elite Four. And of course, can't use Poison Sting to poison them because they're poison types. And overall, God, these guys are actually jerks. I say they're the least interesting, like, fight in this dungeon, and they are, but I did struggle with them here. But I stand by my claim of you really don't need to see me sweep them in Crystal, because good lord, you don't need to see me. It's just not interesting, it's not worth watching. And I'm sure you probably already gave up during that Porygon monologue, because that was boring as hell. More smoke screen. If you're really concerned, I guess you could use a perfect accuracy move, like Shockwave. Shockwave would actually be pretty good because I believe it's special, and it's perfect accuracy. So go for it. Use Shockwave or use Swift, because Swift is actually special, I believe. But kids, don't let Coughings do this to you. Just don't. It's a pitiful life to live. And look at its face, it's mocking me. It is gloating. You can see it in its eyes. Of course, the nice thing about Smokescreen rather than Double Team is that you can switch to another Pokemon, and then your new Pokemon will be able to hit reliably. But God knows I hate switching between, hate switching. Because, man, I love the free switch-ins. Anyway, during that whole escapade, I revived Bree, and Bree can now take care of these guys. Hopefully. But it would have sped up the process considerably if I had trained Bree a few more levels, maybe gotten Bree a couple more kills on the way up to get her up a few more levels. But overall, it was kind of attrition. This is a dungeon after all. You should be bringing revives and healing items. So, I mean, I can get away with reviving Bree. I don't feel shame in doing that. And I believe that's the main challenge of Betrayal out of the way. He only has the one Coughing left. And with any luck, it will go down smoothly. I like that, Coughing going down smoothly. It's contradictory, you see. That's how it works. And of course, it's mastered the Sudowoodo art of not dying when it really should. Yes, I am serious, actually. And finally, Coughing out of the way. If you have an actual Psychic type that gets stabbed from Psychic type moves, that fight is probably just a total cakewalk. That's why I'm gonna say that I had so much trouble with it. Anyway, now we gotta find the director down in the underground. And for whatever reason he gave us the key, I don't understand. Stupid villain tactics. But now we gotta find the actual director. So, let's first heal up the poison. So that is not a fun thing for people to have. And get down to the bottom level. And that takes care of the first segment of this dungeon, and I will see you guys next time for Goldenrod Underground.